Giles Brown.
Let's talk.
My next guest has also got himself is somewhat of a reputation in the world of football. The not so secret football agent is the new book, the eagerly awaited autobiography of Barry Silkman. Best Zidane, Maradona, a lifetime of dealing with superstars. He joins me live from obviously his luxury pad overlooking the harbour at Monaco. Barry, how are you?
I wish, Giles. I'm good. How are you?
I'm, another day on the Costa del Sol. It's better than Brixton, as I always say.
Not wrong.
So for those people who've been living under a stone for the past, what shall we say, sort of 30 years or so, just explain a little bit about your playing career and a little bit about, give us the Barry Silkman 101, as the Americans would say.
Okay, well, I started my football career. I started at Wimbledon and played for many clubs, and those clubs, the biggest clubs, they included Manchester City, Crystal Palace, Queen's Park Rangers, and then the longest spell was 4 years at Leyton Orient, 3 of those years as player, assistant manager, coach under Frank Clark. And then when I finished playing football, I was at a loose end, and we didn't earn the money that they earn now, obviously.
Yeah.
So I quickly became skint. I was training greyhounds for a little while, extremely successfully, but made no money. I couldn't figure out how anyone made any money out of it. So I packed that in by accident, if you like, default, and fell into a football agency through a guy called Danny O'Shea, who I used to play with at Southend. He told me that he was at Cambridge.
Yep.
They had a very, very good left back. He had no agent, and Cambridge looked like they were about to be relegated from what is now the Championship to Division 1. And he thought I should become his agent. And I hadn't watched a football match for nearly 4 years. So I didn't even know who the managers were anymore. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up getting Alan Kimball a move to Wimbledon.
Yep.
And everything just took off from there.
Can I just go back to that, to your playing career? Because, amongst the roster of fine clubs, and we'll ignore the one north of the M25, but that is a collection of London football clubs. And, Queen's Park Rangers, Crystal Palace, Leyton Orient, I mean, the supporters from that lot are absolutely, they're something else, aren't they?
Oh, they're brilliant. And Brentford, by the way.
Okay.
I was at Brentford as well. Yeah, I've got to tell you, the supporters at Leyton Orient, when you talk about glutton for punishment, they were the head of the queue.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. I have to say, every club I played for, I found the supporters, for me anyway, fantastic. Even when I take a bit of stick, it was always with a laugh and a joke.
Yeah.
I never took anything that seriously in life anyway. We're only here once, Giles. We got one shot at it. So every football match I had, I tried to enjoy. And I was a little bit different to a lot of players. The first thing with a lot of players is they've got to win. They must win under all costs. I wasn't like that. I was like, I want to enjoy myself first. And then if we happen to win, that would be amazing. But I thought, if we win and I don't enjoy it, what's the point of doing the job? It's only a job, the same as everything else. You just happen to be lucky and be in the public eye. But whatever you do in life, Giles, if you don't enjoy it, you don't want to go in every morning.
Yeah, I mean, as those influencers always say, if it's not your passion, then why are you doing it? It's funny, in Leyton Orient, I've interviewed Barry Hearn twice, and every time we talk about it, that grounds him, I think, rather than thinking, because it's like, he's been the chairman, hasn't he, of Leyton Orient for years and years, and he's just got that sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but, he was. I think Barry looks back on it. I like Barry a lot. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
He was a difficult man to deal with. But I've got to tell you, I really like. He wasn't my chairman. I was there before that.
Yeah,
I was an agent when he was there. I didn't really have much doing because at that level. But he's a really, really lovely guy. And I think now, if you look back at it, he'd probably think, what was I doing taking over Leighton Orient? I should have stuck to snooker and boxing, you know?
I mean, and also it's a really fascinating period because you talk about this whole thing, and I come from a generation where, when I was growing up, and it was like Kevin Keegan, Brooking, all that sort of thing. But footballers, when they finished being footballers, like you said, you went off and ran a pub, or you opened a corner shop, or the whole thing. You didn't, pick out your baby Bentley, did you? So it's been a fascinating. Exactly, so it's not only a book about your career, but it's how the game has changed in terms of, and agents. We didn't know anything about agents. We sort of knew like Malcolm Allison in a big furry coat on the touchline, etc. But we didn't know about agents as such. We just assumed that you were sort of signed by a boyhood club, and you came over like George Best did, from Northern Ireland. You went into digs, and you spent 2 years living as somebody's lodger.
Yeah, but there were no agents, Giles. There were no agents. Full stop. They weren't there. So you had to negotiate your own contract. I mean, I'll never forget this story with Kenny Sansom. I was at Terry Venable signed me at Crystal Palace, and he said, "Silk, if you do well after a year, I'm going to give you a really good rise." So I said, "Okay." So me and Kenny Sansom were going in at the same time. Like Kenny said to me, "Look, Silk, you go first." Because in them days, it was a manager who did the contracts. Now, you're sitting down with either the chairman or the CEO or the head of recruitment, and you're, as an agent, you're sorting out the contracts with them. But in them days, as a player, you just went in and faced the manager. So Kenny said, "Silk, listen, you got more bottle than me. You go in. Let's see what you get." So I've gone in, and it's so funny. I'll never forget. Terry was sitting on this massive chair, and it was high. It was really high. And it was his desk and the chair on a little platform. And you sat down on this tiny little chair, and you're looking up at him, and already you feel about 2 inches tall. It was like a nightmare. So I sit down, he said to me, I'll never forget this. He's gone, "Silks, how do you think you've done this season?" Straight away, you're frightened to say anything, yeah? So I said, "I think I've done really well, TV." He said, "Silk, I have to tell you, you have always called him TV, never gaffer, never boss, always TV."
Right.
And he said, TV said me, "Silks, you have. I've got to tell you, you had a really good season." He said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for £100 a week rise." He said, "Where are you looking for it?" He said, "Because you won't find it in here." So he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you £50 a week rise, and I'll give you £50 on your appearance money." He looked up, and on the wall there was this clock. And he said, "Turn around and look at the clock." And I turned around and looked at it. He said, "You got 3 minutes to decide." He said, "If not, you can just stay on the contract you're on." I went, "Okay, I'll sign it." Yeah. So I come out, and Kenny Sansom goes, because nobody was worried about hiding their wages from other players. Everybody told everyone what they were earning.
Yeah.
So I come out, and Kenny Sansom said, "Silks, what do you get?" I said, "I've got 50 quid on my basic, 50 quid on my appearance." He said, "I'm not accepting that. I want 100 on the basic and 100 on my appearance." I said, "Good luck." He said, "Wait for me here, Silk." I'm waiting. I swear to you, within 2 minutes, he'd come back out. I've got, that was quick. He went, "I got the same as you." He said, he only gave me 1 minute, and he gave you 3. So he said to me, "I've got 50 quid on my basic and 50 quid on my appearance." And that's how it was, Giles. And there was funny enough, I spoke to Kevin Keegan, first time, a very long time, about 3 or 4 months ago. I had a great relationship with him when he was manager. And obviously I played against him as well when he was at Liverpool.
Yeah.
And we were saying that players today, I'm not talking about all players, don't get me wrong, but a majority players at the highest level, the Premier League, a majority, if they work for 3 years, some of them 1 year, they've never got to work again.
Yeah.
Never have to work again. And not one person I know, going back to when I was at Man City, we had the England centre-half, Dave Watson, a terrific player, hard as iron.
Exactly,
He had a furniture shop. And he would go his furniture shop and work. It was just crazy.
But the thing is, because of the money that's coming, you know this better than I did, Barry, but because of the money that's come into the game now, that's all they have to do. And the problem is that you talk about going in to see Terry Venables, who in Spain is absolutely adored, you know, for El Tel, he was known as, you know, Barcelona. One of the very few people who made the transition to become, you know, and really went down as, you know, as one, and, you know, the Catalans took him as one as their own, a lovely guy. But you see now, like I said, you guys grew up wanting to play football first. You know, you all knew each other. You were in clubs for a long period of time. So you got that esprit de corps, wouldn't they call it? But now, of course, because of the money that's come in the game, you've got, shall we say, more mercenary agents. Mbappe, good morning to you. Nicholas Anelka, I salute you. And they know that. So there's, you know, people are being dropped in and dropped out. It's not, you don't all come from the same background, because every team used to have hard men like Watson or the Scottish contingents. Yeah. And that's kind of all gone now. And that's when people...
Terry Hurlock.
Yeah, you know.
You don't want to get tackled by him. Norman Hunter, good luck. You know, I'll tell you how I describe it, Giles.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me about 4 or 5 months ago, what's the difference with football today to when you played? And this is the best way to describe it. When I played, it was 80% sport and 20% business. It's now 80% business and 20% sport. That's the best way to describe it, because it is a huge, huge business. And things have changed with players as well. We used to sit on a team coach. We played cards. No real money would change hands, be like 5p and 10p, because no one wanted to lose any money. You couldn't afford to. And also other players didn't want to take the money off of other players. So you used to play cards sometimes for nothing, matchsticks and stuff like that. You would tell jokes. I'd be on a coach for an hour with the players telling them a load of jokes. There was a massive, brilliant rapport between the players. And I had great friends in football, people like Glenn Roeder, and like great friends in football. Today, players get off a coach, they've got their headsets on, they're listening to music, they're playing their Game Boy, they're on their computer. Nobody has a conversation with anyone when they get on that coach. There's no rapport between the players. The only rapport is before the game, they all get on a huddle and talk to each other. We never had to do that, because our rapport was we were together. We used to go out and have a meal together. After we finished training, we'd all go down the cafe and all have bacon, eggs and sausages together. Yeah. It was like, it was just a different life.
Because it's a sport at that point. Like you said, 80% sport.
Correct.
And now it's, you know, now any team is a business. And so therefore they have to report to shareholders, and the manager's not even, I mean, managers used to be set in stone, basically. You used to have to, you know, look at how long Ferguson was at Manchester United. That would never happen now, because he'd be gone within 2 seasons, if that. And so you established a culture, because all you answered to were the chairman, and the chairman back in the day were just happy to be sitting in the boxes in their blazers having another pint, weren't they? Rather than saying we have to report to our shareholders and what's happening with the marketing, and we need to get a franchise in Miami.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, Giles. I mean, the only manager I know now that's been around forever at the same club, and I've got to say he's done a spectacular job, is Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. Everywhere else you look, they're here today, gone tomorrow. The only upside for them is they're on terrific wages, and if they're no good, for whatever reason, whatever the reason may be, and they get the sack, they always get at least a year's money. Some get paid off the rest of their contracts. So financially, it's not a burden. When we played, you had to stay in a job. If you didn't stay in a job, you were signing on the dole. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it was better then or worse then. It was just very, very different.
Ian Rush famously said when he went to Juventus from Liverpool, it was like a different country because going overseas was an exotic adventure. And I mean, I remember when, Ardiles and Ricky Villa came to Tottenham.
Ricky Villa, yeah.
And it was like, they bought these.
It was massive when Arnold Muren and Franz Tyson went to Ipswich. It was like, oh my God, there's 2 Dutch players come here. It was, Ricky Villa and Ozzy Ardiles. I remember they just took up every story. Now it becomes a story if an English player signs for another English club. It is so strange. I mean, you were talking about Terry Venables before. I had a great relationship with Terry. People can read about it in the book. Terry and I were really, really good friends right up until probably the year before he passed away. We still spoke on the phone, even though things weren't so great for him.
Yeah.
And I've got to say that Terry, I always tell the story, and this is a true story. And I told this, I did all the talking at Stan Bowles. We did a Think with Stan Bowles when he was alive, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
And Terry came to it along with George Graham and a lot of the ex-players. And I said the story there that when Terry took over as manager of Crystal Palace, the very first player he signed was me. His next job was Queen's Park Rangers. The very first player he signed was me. His next job was Barcelona. I said, what happened there? And Terry stood up and he went to everyone. It's true. But, when Terry went to Barcelona, we used to speak a lot. Terry had great admiration for me of my knowledge of football. He would say to me, you're the only player I know that has the knowledge that you've got. And I want to always talk to you about football wherever I am. And he went to Barcelona and he called me. He was only there a few days. He said, I've got a problem. I think he was there about a week. Yeah. He said, I've got a problem, Silk, a big problem. I said, what? He said, Maradona. So I said, okay, what's the problem?
What do you mean, what's the problem? Yeah. Where do you start, Barry? Come on.
He said to me, his legs have gone, Silk. I said, really? He said, Silk, trust me, his legs have gone. Ooh. He's lost a yard over the first 4 yards. He said, and the problem I've got, the chairman, who they call here the president, absolutely loves him. The supporters love him, but here's my biggest problem. Every move has to go through Maradona. The players will not start an attack unless somebody has given the ball to Maradona. He said, but it's a big problem. He said, I've got a player here called Bernd Schuster. I said, yeah, the blonde, the German. He said, yeah. He said, Silky, he is something out of this world, but no one's seeing his real talent because he should be the one where the ball goes through. What do I do? I said, TV. Many times we spoke about when you're in the position of strength as a manager. Everybody believes you're in a position of strength when you win the league. You're not, because when you win the league, every top manager in the world wants your job. So the only time you're in a massive position of strength is when you first walk into a club. The chairman has to back you. He has to. It's got no option. I said, you're in there a week, TV. Go to the chairman. Tell him he's got to take Maradona out. He said, Silk, he'll go mad. I said, don't care what he does. Tell him he's got to go. And tell him the reason why. Terry phoned me weeks later. He said, Silks, it's done. All I've got to do now is win the league. Oh, wait, well, that's all right. They haven't won. Because everyone thinks Barcelona used to keep winning the league when Terry went there. They hadn't won it for 10 years.
Yep, that's correct.
10 years.
Yeah.
And I said to Terry, well, don't worry, it's only 10 years since they last won it. And he won the league. And Bernd Schuster was magnificent.
And became a legend in Barcelona. Because it would have been dead easy to say, okay, we're not going to muck up with Maradona, and Bernd Schuster could have gone off to, I don't know, Osasuna. But Bernd Schuster is now talked as one of the greats in the same way
because
that Cleveland.
Of Terry.
Yeah,
because of Terry.
And it's interesting you say that because of Messi, because Messi was kept on too long at Barcelona, but they couldn't get rid. Yes,
it happens because chairmen idolise them. They're frightened of what the supporters will say if they let the coach get rid of them. And they end up staying on 1 or 2 years too long.
You've mentioned one of the greats of great teams of Spanish football, right? Which is obviously Barcelona. Should we go over to the dark side, Real Madrid, which eats its children, shall we say? But you've worked. I've got a special feeling for Real Madrid, but let's not even go there. You've worked with Zinedine Zidane, who is, I mean, more than a player. The background story of Zinedine Zidane and what he became, what he stood for. Forget about the Real Madrid stuff, but actually that French team that for once brought together France when they won the World Cup. But what's he like? Because you've dealt with him, haven't you?
Yeah, what happened was I had a very small dealing with him. Right. What happened was I received the authorization via another agent, Jerome Anderson, to sell Zinedine Zidane from Bordeaux. I went out and watched him. I only watched 45 minutes, and that was enough. I thought he was absolutely magnificent. Yeah. So I thought, right, he's got to go to a top club. And he was, in them days, £5-6 million was big money, yeah? And they wanted 1.2 million. And out of that 1.2 million, they give you back 10%. So you get £120,000 back. I'd never seen £120,000. At that stage, I was struggling to see like 20,000.
You were still on 50, and 50 would be good money at that point.
So I said, do you know what? Newcastle, right up his street, Aspria and all them type of players. He would be magnificent. So I come back, called Kevin Keegan. This is at the beginning of January 1996.
Wow.
I said to Kevin, I found you a player. And even to this day, Kevin tells everyone the best agent I ever dealt with was Silky. The best judge of a player I've ever met in my life was Silky. Never met anyone like him. He still says it to this day. I said to Kevin, you've got to buy this player. So Kevin said, right, I'll get my scout to watch him. Now, I don't know who went to watch him, but in them days, it was fax machines. Remember, everything come by fax.
Yeah.
No emails and text messages.
Waiting for a fax. Running out of paper at the wrong moment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the cartridge has gone. Here we go. Yeah.
Remember, it was unbelievable. So they go to watch him, and on the Monday, I get a phone call to say that you'll be receiving the report that Kevin's had. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. Lovely. So I'm at home. My office was in one of my bedrooms, and I can hear the fax machine go off, and in I go, and through comes this report. I wish to this day that I'd have kept it, but you don't even think of things like that.
Sure.
You have 1996.
And plus the paper used to run out. Remember, the ink is a fax paper. Would actually
run out. That would run out. It was a nightmare, yeah. And the report said that, this is from the Scout, Silky has grossly over-exaggerated the player. Now, at that time, Wolves were bottom of what is now the Championship, okay?
Right.
So we've got the Premier League Championship. They were bottom of what is now the Championship, so it's easier to talk in those terms.
Sure.
He said, at best, I think he could play for Wolves, but I'm not even sure if he's good enough for that. So I phoned Kevin up. I say, Kev, I don't know who watched him, but he's clueless. I said, you got to buy him. He said, Silky, as much as I'd love to, I have to go on my scouts reports. So I phoned up a guy called Maurizio Peverali, who was working at the time for Juventus. Mm-hmm. His brother-in-law was a guy called Roberto Bettiga, who was the chief of Juventus, an fantastic player. And I said to Maurizio, speak to your brother-in-law, a player called Zinedine Zidane. I'd love to be part of the deal, but I don't think I'll be able to because all my dealings with Zidane and with the club have been to come to England. And Zidane would love to come to England, but I know as well he would never say no to Juventus. Okay?
The old lady.
Yeah. He come back to me a few days later. He said to me, they know about him already and they really like him. And Roberto said, what do you think his level is? And I said, tell your brother-in-law his level is the highest in the world. And within a year, I mean, how far out was I? I said within a year, they'd be able to sell him for 5 million. They sold it for 50. Right?
Yeah.
I said within a year, they'll be able to add 400% on and they'll be able to sell him for 5 million. So he come back a few weeks later. He said this was by the time we got to March, beginning of March, he said they've bought him. But then, because in them days, the windows were in the end of March.
Yeah.
He said they've bought him, but they're going to leave him at Bordeaux till the end of the season, and then he's coming next season. I said, well, it's going to be interesting to see whether I'm right or wrong. Well, to be fair, he exceeded my expectations by light years, but at least I was right. He was good enough for Newcastle.
Talking about legends, did you have to deal with Jaap Stam? Who, he must have been, I mean, obviously he's there with his cymbal collection, a big, he loved his ballet. Jaap Stam was probably the most fearsome looking footballer. You talk about Dave Watson, but Jaap Stam's got to be up there, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a story about Jaap Stam. There's a guy, lovely guy called Bob Mascan. He had a company. There was 3 guys, Bob Mascan, Henk van Ginkel, and Tom van Dalen. And they had a company called World Soccer Consults. And I went over to watch Bob Mascan's son. He was a centre half. And I'm watching this game, and I'm thinking, that right back looks good, but he don't go over the halfway line. He's winning every tackle, every header. He was like a giant. So I said to Bob after the game, I said, see that right back? I said, he looks like a centre half and he could be a really good player. Do you think they would sell him? He said, well, they've just bought him, Silky, and he's cost them about he's cost them about £1,200 from a non-league club. And I believe he is a centre-half. But what's happened, he wasn't supposed to play, but the 2 right-backs got injured. So I said, right, got to introduce me to him. We've got to try and do a deal. So I met him after the game, met Bob's son, and I said to Bob, I don't think your son's good enough, So, and it turned out he wasn't. Good player for there, but not for England. So I went and met the chairman. I said to the chairman, would you take £100,000 for Jaap Stam? He went, yes. Like, he didn't even hesitate.
Yeah.
He went, yes.
Yeah.
So I come back. I had a great relationship with Millwall. Mick McCarthy was the manager, and Reg Burr was the owner. And I had a deal with them. Any player that was costing $100,000 or less, they would just sign him. Yep. They wouldn't even ask anyone to watch, just sign it. So I come back, I said, you've got to sign this player, Jaap Stam. And Reg nicknamed him Postage Stamp because he thought his name was Stamp. I said, no, it's Stam, yeah? So Reg said to me, what's the cost? I said, 100,000, and then you've got to pay agents' fees. Mm-hmm. He said, can the agents' fees be in the 100,000? And I said, no, got to be on top. He said, in that case, we've got to watch him. I said, it's going to be difficult for you because he's playing right back at the moment, but he's a centre-half. So when the scout goes, explain to him he's got to look at him as a right back. Don't look at him as a centre-half. So the scout goes to watch the game, comes back, and his report said, never got forward, never got any crosses in, never did this, never. I said to Reg, he's a centre-half. So I spoke with the scout, and he said to me, but Silky, how are you supposed to look at a right back as though he's a centre-half? I went, you look at his positional sense, you look at how many headers he won in the box, how many headers he won from corners, from free kicks, for, against. You look at all those things. You look at his pace, the way he turns to the right, turns to the left. Oh, he said, I can't look at anything like that.
Believe it or not, Barry, we're going to run out of time, and I'm going to crash the news, which is the cardinal sin, even more so than getting in the way Jaap Stam on a charge. And we didn't even touch on the working with football as opposed to working with rock stars. I think I might have to get you back on, Silky. I think that
would be lovely, Giles. Right? I'd love it, mate. So
because I'm literally going to overrun the news, and that means people come down the line from London, if not Leighton, and give me a hard time. The book is called The Not So Secret Football Agent. I'll get you back on because I think we need some more time on this one. Barry Silkman. We didn't even talk about Bestie, for goodness sake.
I know.
If you can, by the way, listeners, you can order the book via our own virtual bookstore. I will get you back on so we can continue this conversation. For the moment, Barry Silkman, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Giles. God bless.